You have to see it for yourself.
After this, there is no turning back.
You take the blue pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to Take the Blue Pill, the PlayStation VR podcast. We'll be talking about the PlayStation virtual reality system, its games, and what they mean for you, your home, gaming, and the very nature of reality itself. Remember, there is no spoon.
Good evening, ladies and jelly babies, and welcome to Take the Blue Pill, the PlayStation VR podcast. My name is Kneelsbores, and I'm an alcoholic. Well, actually, I'm not. But I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about what this podcast is for, why I decided to start it, and what you'll be hearing on the podcast. Well, obviously, this is to do with PlayStation Virtual Reality, this incredible new headset that has been released by Sony. And it's my intention to talk about it from my point of view. I am, as well as a lifelong gamer, I am also an artist and an artificial intelligence researcher. So I'm never going to stick to the normal description of games reviews and games news. I'm always going to drift off a little bit into the potential, the philosophy, but at the bottom of all of it is going to be this desire to investigate an actual practical virtual reality headset in our front rooms, in our living rooms, that we can afford and we can buy. So that's what we're going to talk about. Each episode, I'll tell you a little bit about the latest news, a selection of items on the PlayStation Virtual Reality headset. There'll also be the Rotten Meta section, where I'll review one or more PlayStation VR games or experiences. There'll be the IMHO section, which is where I'm going to give my opinion about some hot topic around the VR headset. And there'll be the TripsTicks section, where I give you some tips and tricks about what to do. And it'll all finish off with my little personal favourite, Under the Hood. I'll take some time to indulge myself to talk about the philosophy, the art, and some of the things that the PSVR has inspired in me with each episode. So, let's begin with the news.
The news. Yes. The news.
Well, the obvious big piece of PSVR news is you can't buy it. This is a huge piece of equipment that's meant to be revolutionizing the gaming world, but you just can't buy it. It took me hours of browsing and searching the internet and keeping an eye out, and even multiple orders, until I could get a PSVR headset at the actual release price. I still had to pay over the odds for the Move controllers, but it's almost impossible to get one of these darn headsets. There are, on the internet, you can find various sites that will give you updates about where you're most likely to be able to find a headset, how you can get hold of one. Amazon are sold out. Many of the British gaming stores are sold out, and online stores. So really, that's the biggest news for PSVR. Considering all the hype, considering all the excitement, you just can't buy it. So put it on your Christmas list. Tell your parents, tell your family, tell your girlfriend, tell your boyfriend, buy me a PSVR. The other big piece of news that's been coming out is Sony have admitted that there is a drift problem. Now, personally, this image drift doesn't bother me. It's not been a problem for me, but there have been people finding it a problem, to the point where Sony have, in fact, published guidance. You can find that on the internet. Just search on the PlayStation VR drift problem. There is now a suggested solution from Sony, but, you know, not seen it. Not been a big deal for me. If you're someone who this has been a big deal for you, well, you must be finding it very annoying that I'm saying this, but there you go. I can't lie. I cannot tell a lie. It's not been a big deal for me. So you go ahead, you read the article. I hope it's cool. I just love the way that whenever a game, like for example Eve Valkyrie, seems to go off center, I just hold out the controller, I hold down the options button, and it all recenters, and life is great again. Happy days. But if you got that drift problem, now you know where to go and what to do. So that's all the news. Now we're going to have the reviews.
Rotten Meta. Now.
Welcome to Rotten Meta, the reviews section of the Take the Blue Pill podcast. This episode, we're going to be looking at Until Dawn, Rush of Blood. Have to say something from the outset here. Never played anything to do with Until Dawn before. I'm a total newbie to Until Dawn, and not a huge person for these point and shoot. I love my 3D, I love my first person shooter games, Doom and what have you. But when it comes to actually pointing a gun at things, never been much into that. But let's get into it. So this game, Rush of Blood, it's fairly short, you know, it is a fairly short game, but I'll give you the headline here. It packs a punch. It shocked me. I'm very glad that I have this game. I'm very glad that I paid that little extra bit of money to get hold of a set of Move controllers. You know, it had to pay over the odds at the moment. A lot of the stuff, you got to pay over the odds. I'll give you a little side issue here. If you go to the British website, Game, huge British store, these controllers, these Move controllers that enable you to kind of reach into the PSVR world, about 130, 140 quid, when it should be 70 quid a pair. I found a way around it. I ordered a couple of singles, 50 quid each, including postage. They've come. They weren't in boxes, but they were new. I'm happy because I can play Until Dawn, Rush of Blood. If you don't like horror games, I'm going to tell you up front, this is a horror game. And I'm going to tell you something else up front. I don't like horror games. You know what? I enjoyed this game because the feeling of being in that world. Now this is, you know, this is something that maybe it'll come up in the under the hood section later in this episode. It's just the way it is, you know. You look at a game on the PSVR and you're not just seeing the game. You're having your first experience of virtual reality. Yes, I tried the Oculus Rift a while back. I've experienced demos, and but I was sitting in my front room. The lights were down, and I was playing virtual reality, and I was seeing a game designed for virtual reality, designed so that people are willing to spend money on it. And how much of my reaction was because of that? How much of it was because of game quality? Very hard to tell. Very hard to tell. But I can tell you this. I enjoyed it, man. I enjoyed it. You're essentially, Rush of Blood, you're on a roller coaster. The roller coaster effect is of limited use. It's kind of cool at first, but after a while, the lack of rumbling, the fact that my seat in my front room doesn't rumble and shake around, you know, it was obvious to my brain that I wasn't really on a roller coaster. So it did add to the adrenaline, zooming around on the roller coaster. But the most adrenaline impactful elements were when everything slowed down and I'd be placed in rooms and you just don't know where the monsters are going to come from. The sound is three-dimensional around you. And what's great is you don't feel totally vulnerable because at the beginning of the game, hopefully you've calibrated your Move controllers. You can do it. You don't have to use a Move controller. You can do it with the old normal controller as well. But with the Move controllers, it gave me a real sense of not being so vulnerable. because each Move controller is a gun, and if they're calibrated properly, which sometimes was a bit of a pain getting that right, but it was worth it. It was worth the effort. I could move my arms around, look from side to side, and be shooting crazily. And you can reload by actually shaking your controllers around, a little like if you've got a revolver. So I would like to highlight one other element of this game. I haven't played the whole game. I don't play a whole game before reviewing it. It's not my thing. That's not the way I do things. But something I'd like to highlight is on the second level, if you like to call it, the experience of going through this one particular room, very gory room, horrifically gory, not humans, not gory towards humans. I videoed myself while this was happening, and I was swearing in disbelief at the just the experience, the grittiness, the goriness of this, and the whole twisted nature of it was highly impressive. Thankfully, there is that kind of, one of the great things about the VR horror game is, you can tell it's graphics, it's computer graphics, and it kind of keeps a little bit of a barrier between yourself and total insanity. But I would recommend this game. You can't get a sense of it watching the YouTube videos. You've got to play it. And when I watched the YouTube videos and I saw people shooting balloons and shooting plates, I thought, what a piece of crap. But when you play it, it's different. When the torches on your guns highlight little spooky elements around you, it's great. So I give this a good recommend. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. I'm a bit like Amazon. I do a 5 max. But with a proviso. Does everyone know what proviso means? With a little side comment. Some of my reaction may have been due to the mode of playing, the VR, the use of the Move controllers, So who knows? Maybe this was a 3.5. But I'll tell you what. In fact, I'm going to revise it. The experience was 4.5 for me. There were some elements that you just can't recreate without being able to make my chair rumble, which is just, it's not going to happen at the moment with the PSVR. So there we go. I'm going to give it 4.5 as an experience. And that's the end of Rotten Meta.
IMHO. Give me your yo-yo.
We will now get into IMHO, where I give my opinion, whether you want it or not, about some controversial topic, something that's been bugging people, and I just say, IMHO, this is what I think. And what I'd like to talk about in this episode is, it's not about the technology. You got all these YouTube videos, you got all these commentators comparing the resolution. Which has the highest resolution? Is it the PSVR? Is it the Vive? Is it the Oculus Rift? Comparing latency down to milliseconds, comparing the accuracy of tracking, minor drift, comparing the length of the game. These well, maybe the length of the game is not a technology issue. That's a bit unfair. But there is a lot of comparison of technology. There's a lot of these. I don't know. There's a lot of. There's also a kind of VR. What would I call it? Discount. It's like some of the reviewers, what they're saying is, yeah, VR's great, yeah, it's impressive, but because of that, we're going to dial down our opinions. We don't want to appear like fanboys. Guys, VR is effing amazing. VR is incredible. It is, you can't argue about that. Yes, you got to put this bloody headset on, and that's a yes, you're going to be isolated. Yes, it's not as comfortable. You can't sit in front of the TV screen for 3 hours wearing a VR headset. But whichever way you look at it, there is a level of immersion which cannot be experienced at second hand. You've got to do it. You've got to be there. And I have to say that it doesn't matter what the resolution is. Not so much. It doesn't matter how good the tracking is. I don't care if things jitter around. I'm not, what needs to be described about the PSVR is the immersion. Because you put on the PSVR, first time I put it on, okay, I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm not. First time I put on the PSVR, slightly disappointed. Because the field of view, I kind of half thought I'd be like I was inside the YouTube videos, right? But no, you are looking through quite a big field of view, a big screen, but you can see the edges of this kind of where the lenses are that you're looking into. And I thought, well, this isn't going to be like virtual reality. I'll tell you what, I will tell you what, and I'm going to use as an example, Eve Valkyrie. You put that on, it took me it took me seconds to forget about this kind of the edge of the lenses feeling. The way the game was designed to draw you in, to immerse you in the world of Eve Valkyrie in space. I looked down and I could see my body, I could see my hands. I would lean from side to side and the body in the cockpit would lean from side to side. I'd take off and I'd go out and suddenly surrounded by all these ships. And not just that, but I could reach out into this world with my lasers. I could zoom into it. I could barrel roll around. By the way, I don't get motion sickness. So that's another reason you might hate me. If you get motion sickness on VR, so sorry to hear that. I didn't even get slightly queasy with Eve at all. This is the shooting spaceship game. So, and I was worried about Eve because it's quite an expensive game, right? What are we looking at? I mean, I got it cheap for 40 quid, £40. So what's that? God, Brexit has done crazy things to the exchange rates, but I think it's not much more in dollars if you can get it somewhere low cost. I was a bit worried. I thought, well, isn't it just going to be like I've got a controller and I can look around, because I can't use the Move controllers, so it's just going to be like a normal game, but I can kind of look around in 3D. No, it is not like that. It is not like that. It's nothing like that at all. Before you take into account issues of resolution, issues of length of gameplay, issues of any of these things, you have to see what it's like to be in this world. And in fact, I am going to talk about this in Under the Hood later in the episode. You've got to see what it's like to be in this world, to be reaching out into it with your lasers, to be thrusting into it with your rockets. This, in my humble opinion, a lot of the stuff they're talking about in reviews, I mean, I'm as interested as the next person, you know what I mean? I want to hear this stuff, but this is not important. A lot of these technical details, a lot of these people they're trying to be a bit cynical. The PSVR's a flash in the pan. It's like the Vita. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Vita, you know what I mean? They're trying to be a bit cynical, but you've got to listen to the people that are being emotional on YouTube. Read the reviews that are being emotional, because that's, in my humble opinion, what the PSVR is about, the emotional impact it has, and that emotional impact is profound.
Trips and ticks. Ticks and trips.
Welcome to the Trips and Ticks section, where we give you a few tricks and tips for your PSVR. Now, the first, these are basic things, all right? Your headset arrives, you're all excited, you've been watching the YouTube videos, listening to this podcast, and you whack it on immediately and connect it up. And a few things start happening. It starts steaming up. It seems to be off center. The things don't seem to be as clear as you thought they would be in the headset. So, today's main trip and tick is relax, go slow. Maybe that first session you'll go crazy with your PSVR, fine. Second session, just slow it down. Maybe do it when your friends or family or whatever aren't around, alright? And learn how to put the headset on properly. Wipe the lenses. Turn the headset on maybe 30 minutes before you use it, so you reduce the temperature differential between your body and the headset. It reduces the steaming up effects. When you put the headset on, before you leap in, take some time to get rid of the any fuzziness. Use both elements of control in the headset. You've got something that can adjust the visor, and you've got something that can adjust the connector at the back. Use both of those to get it right. And measure the distance between your eyes. What am I talking about? Have a dig in the settings, have a search on the internet. It'll tell you how to measure the distance between your eyes. And once you've done all this, it will all make more sense. It will all be clearer. You will enjoy it more. You just got to relax. And think about your play area as well. Something I realised, and I love it, my TV is quite far from my sofa. I've got a big front room, a big sitting room, big living room. And it's not ideal for gaming. I've got a big TV, but however big your TV is, when your sofa's that far from it, it reduces the immersion. Great thing about the PSVR, I can sit anywhere. And in fact, I've got a favourite single seat, which I like, in my living room, in my sitting room. And it's actually at right angles to the TV, so I can hardly see the TV when I sit in it. But that's the one I'm using for the PSVR, because you don't need to be able to see the screen. So pick a location where you feel most comfortable, where you can set things up the easiest. Now, I know that's very simple tricks and tips, but you got to get this right. You got to get this right to really appreciate the emotional impact of the PlayStation virtual reality.
Under the hood, you're so good.
Final section this episode is Under the Hood. Each episode I'm going to say a little bit about what I think the implications are of virtual reality, of PlayStation virtual reality. As I said, as well as being a gamer, I am also an artist and an artificial intelligence researcher. So I can't help but think about the implications of this technology for us and for our future. And this is what this section will be about. Now, what I want to talk about a little bit is something I've hinted at earlier in the episode. I want to talk about reality and vision. So, vision is a very powerful sense. You know, our eyes are the dominant of our five senses. They're the most dominant. You can have a huge impact on someone using just eyes and ears. If you think about it, we've got five senses. But you go to the movies, and what do? They put a huge screen up there and a giant sound system. And in fact, if you think of the invention of movies, they didn't even bother with sound. It was all about vision, and they could get away with that because sometimes it feels like vision is reality. And this is one of the reasons why virtual reality is the name for these headsets. Now, frankly, if you're going to count up the senses, your sight is a fifth of your senses, but it's not a fifth of your emotional experience. This is one of the reasons VR is so successful. It's also one of the reasons, almost certainly, why a lot of people using these headsets, not a lot of people, a significant proportion of people using these headsets are experiencing motion sickness, because they've got their vision sense is telling them they're spinning around, that this is happening, and it's such a powerful sense that that when the other senses contradict it, it makes us ill. It's the same, you know, if we're on a ship below deck and all our other senses are telling us we're swaying around, but our vision is saying, no, you're not. And the brain is like, well, vision is a huge signifier of reality, so that's the way I'm going to go. And it causes such a contradiction, you start feeling sick. But this is at the heart of the PSVR. Now, it's not everything. It's not everything. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, you can actually see the edges of the PSVR world when you put the visor on. And it depends on the game designers and the game programmers to create such an immersive world that those edges start to disappear. And how do they know they can do that? If you wear glasses, and let's face it, if you listen to this podcast, you're probably a geek. And if you're a geek, there's a good chance, oh shit, oh, I swore. That means I've either got to edit that out or say there's adult content. Oh! The reason I swore, by the way, was because I shouldn't say anything which any member of the audience might find potentially derogatory. And some members of the audience may not like being called a geek. But bear in mind, what I said was you're probably a geek. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to dial that back. I'm going to say you're possibly a geek. How's that? So, here we are. We've got this system that is imperfect. But as I say, you're possibly a geek, so you possibly wear glasses. And when you put your glasses on in the morning, it doesn't take you long for those glasses to just disappear and you don't notice them anymore, and reality becomes what you see through the holes. And this is what happens with the PSVR. Of course, glasses a lot more comfortable than the PSVR, and that's another issue we're going to get into: the comfort, lack of comfort, the extreme isolation of virtual reality. It's going to be an issue. It needs to be addressed. But right now, the biggest thing that VR has going for it is it uses the sense of sight. Where this is a problem is in, as I said earlier, in Rush of Blood, where you're on the roller coaster. Eventually your body tells you it's a lie. Says, no, you're not on a roller coaster because you're not shaking. And spoiler alert, on the PlayStation Worlds disc, when you're being lowered down and the shark attacks, not as scary as I thought it would be, because of course the sofa, the chair doesn't shake when the shark cage shakes and falls apart, or partly falls apart. So vision is a big part of reality, but it's not everything. And here's a little bit, just to take it further. Here's the, exciting thing, the scary thing. People are working on infinite treadmills. What does that mean? It means you're walking, but you don't move. So suddenly, our experience of VR, we can be standing up and we can walk in any direction. And the infinite treadmill turns around and just allows us to walk. This isn't some weird philosophical thing. This is in development. These have been done. So you stay in one place. We already have gaming chairs that shake. And gradually what will happen is more and more of our senses will become included within virtual reality. And at that point, I'm afraid, or excited, we will have truly taken the blue pill. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this episode of Take the Blue Pill. Tune in next time for more of our news and Rotten Meta and IMHO and TripsTicks and Under the Hood. Have a great time till then, and remember, there is no spoon.